What really happens when you stop giving a narcissist attention? Most people brace for an explosion, but the reality is far more mysterious, and if you look closer, more disturbing. Imagine you wake up one morning, open your eyes, and simply decide you're done. You disconnect from every thread that kept you in their orbit. There's no dramatic exit, no final argument. You just stop engaging, stop reacting to the endless need for drama, praise, and validation. At first, you might think this silence is nothing, a relief for you, maybe a passing annoyance for them, but distance is deceptive. For the narcissist, your silence is a hurricane masquerading as a quiet morning. It breaks the delicate balance they've worked so hard to maintain. The reality, your absence isn't just noticed, it's seismic. The unsettling secret, when you step away, you don't just leave a gap in their routine. You leave a void that gnaws at the very structure of their psyche, not because you were special, not in the way they'd ever admit, but because your attention was the mirror reflecting back the part of themselves they desperately want to see. Desirable, powerful, necessary. And when that mirror disappears, what's left is emptiness, confusion, and something darker than resentment. Why does it hurt them so much? It isn't about love or missing your company. It's about the loss of projection. People, especially narcissists, don't see you as you are. They see you as they need you to be. When you walk away, they're not left with fond memories. They're left staring headlong at the shattered reflection of their own insecurity, a reflection you once held up for them every day. The narcissist's world starts to wobble, and with it comes an unspoken question. What's left of me if you're not here to remind me that I matter? You see, most I need yous from a narcissist aren't really about you at all. They're confessions of dependence on your reactions, your validation, your presence as an audience to their story. The instant you withhold attention, the narcissist's carefully built world starts showing cracks. The illusion shatters. Suddenly their discomfort turns to anger. Guilty thoughts creep in, maybe even fear. But none of it is about losing you. It's about losing that vital source of supply, the endless drip of attention that made them feel alive. So what do they do next? Most won't dare ask themselves the real question: who am I without your gaze? Instead, you'll see a frantic scramble to fill the void. Some will idealize you, painting your absence as a tragic loss that proves how important you were, so long as it paints them as tragic too. Others will demonize you, calling your silence selfish or betrayal. Why? Because blame is easier than facing the terror of emotional dependence. You've probably been here before. Endless messages, sudden eruptions of anger, or icy "you never mattered anyway" pronouncements that reek of desperation. The narcissist's reactions don't emerge in neat, predictable patterns. They change minute to minute, depending on what you once represented in their lives. For the narcissist who depended on you as an emotional crutch, your silence feels like an open wound. For others, it's a wound they thought was healed, suddenly ripped open by your disappearance. For a few, it's a mirror, a blinding confrontation with their own fear of being alone. And here's where things get truly complicated. Most of the time, narcissists never admit they even care. They'll say your silence is no big deal, that you didn't matter. But inside, as days and weeks pass, uncertainty spirals out of control. They begin to question what, if anything, they ever understood about you or themselves. And that anxiety, that loss of control, is the one thing a narcissist can't tolerate. It's ironic. In their minds, you are never that important, never that central, but your silence throws a spotlight on every crack in their emotional armor. Those cracks start to spread, revealing just how much control over you and the relationship they thought they had. When that control slips away, so does their sense of self. So what now? The narcissist must reconstruct a narrative that lets them sleep at night. Either you were the perfect, irreplaceable supply they only value now that you're gone, or you were the villain who dared to leave. Both stories serve the same purpose: to hide an unbearable truth, that your attention was their lifeline. And now it's gone. But this is only the first step in the unraveling. The silence has settled. Days have turned into weeks, and the narcissist's initial shock is wearing off. But here's what most people don't realize. This is when things get dangerous. You thought walking away would end the chaos. Instead, you've accidentally triggered the most manipulative phase of their psychological playbook. Because a narcissist without supply isn't a narcissist who gives up. They're a narcissist who gets creative. The first tactic they deploy, the hoover maneuver, named after the vacuum cleaner, It's designed to suck you back into their orbit through any means necessary. They'll resurrect old memories, send innocent texts about shared experiences, or suddenly develop urgent crises that supposedly only you can solve. I've been thinking about that time or I really need your advice about, sound familiar? These aren't genuine attempts at reconnection. They're calculated fishing expeditions, testing whether your resolve has weakened. But if the soft approach fails, the mask drops completely. What comes next is a phenomenon that'll shock you. Narcissistic rage mixed with calculated manipulation. They don't just get angry, they get strategic about their anger. Some will launch smear campaigns, poisoning mutual friends and family against you with carefully crafted lies. Others will play the victim so convincingly that people start questioning whether you're the problem. The most dangerous ones will use guilt as a weapon, claiming your absence has caused them depression, anxiety, or worse. Here's the twisted part. They genuinely believe their own manipulation. In their mind, you are responsible for their emotional state. Your silence isn't self-care, it's cruelty. Your boundaries aren't healthy, they're punishment. This isn't conscious lying, it's psychological reconstruction of reality to preserve their fragile ego. But beneath all these tactics lies something far more disturbing: the narcissist's slow-motion identity crisis. Without your attention feeding their self-image, they're forced to confront a terrifying question they've spent years avoiding. Who are they when no one's watching? The answer is usually devastating. Strip away the admiration, the reactions, the constant validation, and what's left is often a hollow shell filled with shame, inadequacy, and overwhelming emptiness. Some narcissists handle this realization by doubling down on delusion. They'll create elaborate fantasies about why you left, painting themselves as either the misunderstood hero or the tragic victim. They might even convince themselves that your departure was actually their idea, that they were planning to discard you anyway. This mental gymnastics serves one purpose: protecting them from acknowledging their own emotional dependence. Others spiral into what psychologists call narcissistic collapse. This is when the carefully constructed false self crumbles, revealing the wounded child underneath. They become desperate, erratic, even dangerous. Their usual charm disappears, replaced by raw neediness that repels everyone around them. It's during this phase that they'll often cycle through multiple relationships rapidly, desperately trying to replace the supply you once provided. But here's where it gets even more complex. Your continued silence forces them to face their own patterns for the first time, without you to blame, manipulate, or use as an emotional punching bag. They're left alone with their own behavior. Some will finally seek therapy, not because they want to change, but because they're genuinely confused about why people keep leaving them. The cruel irony, the very thing that might eventually help them, your absence is also the thing they'll hate you most for. During this phase, you might notice something eerie. They start studying you from a distance, social media stalking, asking mutual friends about you, or driving by places they know you frequent. This isn't about missing you. It's about understanding how to regain control. They're analyzing what worked before, what might work again, and most importantly, whether you've truly moved on or if there's still a crack they can exploit. Some will even attempt what therapists call extinction bursts, a final, desperate escalation of all their previous tactics combined. Love bombing mixed with threats, gifts, followed by guilt trips, promises of change accompanied by subtle intimidation. It's their last-ditch effort to break your resolve before accepting that their usual methods have failed. But what happens when even these extreme measures don't work? When your silence remains absolute and your boundaries hold firm? This is when the narcissist faces their ultimate nightmare: irrelevance in your life. Not anger, not hurt, not even hatred, just complete indifference. And for someone whose entire identity revolves around being the center of attention, irrelevance is worse than death. The psychological impact is profound. Some will finally begin the painful process of self-reflection, though it'll take years and often multiple losses before real change occurs. Others will simply move on to new sources of supply, treating people like interchangeable objects designed to fill the void you left behind. But a few, the most dangerous ones, will never let go. They'll carry the wound of your departure like a badge of honor, using it to justify increasingly toxic behavior in future relationships. Your silence becomes their origin story, the moment they decided that vulnerability equals weakness and control equals survival. So, what's really happening in their mind as months pass and your silence continues? Are they finally learning to look inward, or are they plotting their comeback? The answer in part 3 might surprise you, and it'll reveal whether your decision to walk away was the catalyst for their growth, or the trigger for something far more sinister. Months have passed. maybe even years. The narcissist has exhausted their playbook, burned through multiple relationships, and your silence has become a permanent fixture in their psychological landscape. So what's the final verdict? Did your departure save them or destroy them? The answer is more shocking than you might expect. Here's what researchers have discovered about narcissists who experience prolonged abandonment. They don't just change, they fracture into distinctly different psychological paths, and which path they choose reveals everything about who they really were beneath the mask. Path 1. The Phoenix Rising. Roughly 20% of narcissists, the ones with the deepest capacity for self-awareness, eventually use your silence as a mirror for genuine self-reflection. But this transformation doesn't happen quickly or easily. It typically takes multiple losses, not just yours, before they're forced to confront the pattern. Your departure was just the first domino to fall. These narcissists will spend years in therapy, peeling back layers of defense mechanisms they've built since childhood. They'll finally ask the questions they've been avoiding. Why do people always leave? What am I doing that pushes everyone away? The process is brutal, often involving complete personality reconstruction. They'll learn that the confidence they projected was actually desperate overcompensation for feeling fundamentally worthless. The cruel irony? By the time they've genuinely changed, by the time they could actually offer you a healthy relationship, you're long gone. Your silence saved them, but it also cost them the one person who might have appreciated their transformation. It's a bittersweet victory. They become the person you needed them to be, but only after losing you forever. Path 2. The Escalating Destroyer. But here's the disturbing truth. Most narcissists don't choose growth. About 60% become progressively worse after experiencing prolonged abandonment. Your silence doesn't humble them. It radicalizes them. These narcissists develop what psychologists call malignant adaptation. They decide that vulnerability led to their pain, so they'll never be vulnerable again. They become more manipulative, more calculating, more emotionally dangerous. Future partners will pay the price for your courage to walk away. They'll perfect their love bombing techniques, learn to spot empathetic people faster, and develop more sophisticated ways to trap their victims. Your departure becomes their graduate-level education in control and manipulation. They study what went wrong with you like generals studying a lost battle, determined never to lose control again. The most chilling part, they'll often credit you for making them stronger. In their twisted narrative, your abandonment was the wake-up call they needed, not to become better people, but to become better predators. Path 3. The Walking Wounded. The remaining 20% enter what therapists call chronic narcissistic depression. They become the walking wounded, unable to form genuine connections, but too damaged to effectively manipulate others. Your silence broke something fundamental in their ability to connect with people. These narcissists often cycle through addictions, failed relationships, and periods of isolation. They're stuck in an endless loop of attracting people with their superficial charm, then driving them away with their desperate neediness. They never learned how to be alone with themselves, and your absence taught them that solitude is terrifying. They'll spend decades chasing the high that your attention once provided, but nothing ever quite fills that void. Every new relationship is measured against the supply you once gave them. They become emotional vampires, eternally hungry but never satisfied. But here's what nobody tells you about walking away from a narcissist. You didn't just change their life, you revealed who they always were underneath. Your silence was a psychological X-ray, exposing their true character structure. The ones who chose growth were always capable of it. They just needed enough pain to motivate change. The ones who became worse were already predators wearing masks of civility, and the ones who became walking wounded, they were never as strong as they pretended to be. Your departure didn't create their destiny, it revealed it. Years later, if you could peek into their lives, you'd discover something profound. You're still there, not physically, obviously, but psychologically. You've become the ghost that haunts their relationship patterns. Every time they meet someone new, they unconsciously measure them against you. Every time someone else starts to pull away, they hear echoes of your footsteps walking out the door. You didn't just leave their life, you became part of their psychological DNA. Your silence taught them that people can disappear, that supply isn't guaranteed, that even the most devoted person has a breaking point. This knowledge changes how they approach every relationship that follows. The narcissists who grew learned to cherish connection instead of exploiting it. The ones who became worse learned to lock people down before they could escape. The walking wounded learned that loss is inevitable and stopped trying altogether. So what really happens when you stop giving a narcissist attention? You force them to meet themselves, perhaps for the first time in their lives. Some will like what they find and choose to change it. Others will hate what they discover and choose to hide it better. A few will be so horrified that they'll spend the rest of their lives running from that reflection. But here's the beautiful, liberating truth. None of that is your responsibility anymore. You walked away not to fix them, but to save yourself. Whether they chose growth, destruction, or stagnation, that's their story now. Your story? It begins the moment you realize that the most powerful thing you can give a narcissist isn't your attention, it's your absence.